what are some important factors and some things that guys can do to be their best selves mentally? Hey guys, we're sitting down here with Gordie Theisen, pitching and catching coach at Grand Valley State University. Guys, Gordie is someone who I've really enjoyed getting to know over the last couple of years. When I was coaching at Wayne State, we would be sitting there recruiting together, and we always had just awesome conversations. So I really appreciate you being here today at the showcase and evaluating guys and just teaching. I really appreciate that.
Well, we enjoy being at places like this. Sometimes I joke that this is my social life. It's only half a joke, though. But you know, by coming out and seeing guys, whether they're 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th, 12th, then it puts them on our radar. And, of course, we kind of get to see, you know, a whole spectrum of abilities and personalities all in one place in a few short hours. It's pretty good for us.
Oh, yeah, man. I think it's so important to learn as much about the player as a whole. Not just the velos are important, the actions are important on the field, but there's so much more to being successful as a baseball player.
Yeah, and that's part of what the recruiting process is too, is vetting guys or getting to know them and to the next level, getting to know their families a little bit. But, you really get to know them once you start coaching them, but at the same time, for college coaches, our jobs are sometimes on the line, so we want to know what we're getting, and we want to get guys that we feel have some heart and desire, to play the game.
So let me ask you this: I've seen you guys over the years, you just like your staff, in general, everyone that you've worked with, you've done a great job of developing guys. I've seen guys come in and they really are kind of different baseball players by the time they spend their 4 years working with you, which is a huge compliment to you and everything you're doing. But what are some of the things that you do from what are important things from a mental perspective, which I think gets overlooked so much. It's such a mental game. What are some important factors and some things that guys can do to be their best selves mentally?
Well, sometimes the first part of it is for teenage guys to understand how many hours they have in a week. There's 168 hours every week, and if you give them a kind of a sheet where, whether it's in a Google sheet or whatever, where they can kind of plan out their week, then it just helps them to be organized. And being organized really every day starts at the time they wake up and when they wake up and the routine they go through during the day, because when they're going to step in the on-deck circle or step on the mound, their routine is going to help them to be grounded. And being grounded just helps me, I know, and I think it helps most people, just to be, in a situation where you're not going to get surprised by anything, if that makes sense.
Totally.
And then doing that at home in the morning or in their dorm room or their apartment or wherever they're at just helps prepare them for the day. I know if I for whatever reason can't do my morning routine or don't do it or whatever it is, then sometimes I feel like I'm running, like I'm chasing my tail for the first few hours a day. And it's the same thing with showing up at practice mentally prepared. And game days, obviously, mentally prepared. You've got all your equipment, and when you're prepared, you've got everything under control, and you don't have to have any panic moments.
I think one thing too, a lot of guys, they're surprised at the workload to be a college baseball player when they get there. You're talking about having that routine that's really going to help you transition. I think a lot of freshmen really kind of freeze for a second and there's a big transition there from, being a high schooler to a college athlete.
Yeah, well, in college, you're not in high school. They're generally sitting in a classroom from 8 to 3 or whatever it might be, with no breaks other than a few minutes between classes or lunchtime. And in college, they find that they have an hour, maybe 2 hours, maybe even more than that, between classes during the day, and if they don't use that time wisely, then when it comes, night before a test, they're going to be kind of panicking and saying, oh man, I should have studied for this more, I should have prepared, I should have gone to the library or whatever it is. And the college lifestyle is such where all of a sudden, for the first time in a guy's life maybe, he's out there on his own trying to make his own decisions minute by minute throughout the day, and he's got to be the guy, and ultimately he's got to hold himself accountable.
I think there's also an element of not letting it turn into a job. I think staying positive, and I'm a big gratitude guy. I that's my fuel, is gratitude with so many things, grateful for opportunities, grateful just to be able to go out there and do it. And I think sometimes you can lose that perspective, and for me, that's my daily thing is gratitude, breathing, grounding, like you were talking about. That's kind of what keeps me going, on top of working out is another huge piece of that.
Yeah, well, gratitude is really it's an attitude, but it's a way of life as much as anything. And you talk about college, being a college athlete and a college student. You can approach it like a job, but you can approach it like, this is my life. This is everything I'm going to do in my life. I want to do as well as I can, and so it's up to me. And when you talk about college being like a job, it is, without a doubt. But at the same time, I've been a college baseball coach since 1987, and I've told my son, who's also a coach, that I'm never going to retire. Why would I want to retire from coaching baseball? Mm-hmm. And part of that is because when I wake up in the morning, I can't wait to do it. And so, yeah, there are hoops you got to jump through, whether you're a coach, teacher, administrator, or a student athlete. You've got to jump through hoops. But at the same time, if you can recognize that those hoops are there to make you better, then it makes everything a lot easier.
And I appreciate your time and just you being here, and you've made an impact on, I think, on a lot of baseball players' lives, a lot of coaches' lives. You're always posting good reminders, even on social media. I love following you on social media, man. We're gonna post your Twitter up, post my Twitter up, and hopefully we can toss some stuff up there that's a little bit of a reminder to you guys watching. Just some things to be mindful of, and some mindsets to have as you go forward and trying to tackle more things in your life.
Well, I appreciate that, Josh. And actually, sometimes I joke that those tweets, those social media posts that I put out there, they are meant to remind myself of those things. But at the same time, those are things that I practice every day. And our pitchers at Grand Valley, we meditate every single day. And half the time we have catchers and outfielders with us doing it. Half the time we have the infielders. And it's not just about preparing for practice, but it's just about, I remind them that any time during the day when you feel stress coming on, you can take a couple deep breaths and feel your feet flat on the ground and get yourself grounded again. And it just makes every day easier, and it helps to enjoy life, because we are meant to be here to enjoy life.
We're gonna have to sit down and do a more in-depth talk sometime on all these techniques, because I know these guys probably have more questions too. So we'll have to come over to Grand Valley, visit you, and sit down and do a little talk. But I appreciate you, man. Thanks for being here today, and we'll catch you guys next time in the next showcase.